Hey, 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 hey. So, I thought I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things that I would like to see happen in the JavaScript language. And this is a topic near and dear to my heart. And if any of the stage guys are watching this and you think, hey, this Frederick, maybe he's not as dumb as he looks, please, let's have a chat about this, because I would really like to know how I can help out in getting some of this stuff in place. Because if I'm totally honest, a lot of the stuff that happened in ES6 was, some of it was good. Some of it I think was not as important and that as other stuff, like classes is one of those things. I'm gonna go with Douglas Crawford on this one and say that, I don't see why classes was such an important part of it, because I don't see, the stuff that JavaScript does really well is more leaning towards the functional approaches to solving problems. And I just don't see, I understand that there is a value in classes, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying I wonder if it is as important as some of the stuff that I'm going to mention. So one of the first things I think should be in the language is safe deep indexing, which is basically, you've probably done this before yourself. You have an object, and then you have a nested object, and then you have a third nested object. And then you do a triple index into that leaf object and all of a sudden the name changes, all of a sudden the name changes and you have an undefined reference. That's my absolute hands down most common bug that happens several times a week. And I think most people will agree that that is the case. So I use a library called Lodash very often. There's other ones like underscore and Ramda is pretty cool too. And it has this magical, amazing function that's called get, which allows me to put, as a first parameter, I put my object or my data structure. It can be an array. And then I basically, as a second argument, it takes a string that represents the index structure that I want. So dot foo, dot bar, whatever. And then as a third optional parameter, I can give it what's gonna be returned, a default value, if for some reason it fails at fetching this deeply nested property that I'm trying to access. Now, if we look at Swift, they have this, it's not just Swift, but they did it really nicely. Kotlin does a very similar thing with the idea of optionals. I think it would be so cool if we would do something follow their pattern, question mark, then a dot, then foo, question mark, dot bar, that sort of stuff, so that you can through the language express that I'm not really 100% sure that this thing is always going to be at this specific location in my nesting structure, and then you do the shorthand syntax and or, and you get the default value. That would be so cool. Guys, that would be amazing. It would reduce the bugs by so many problems would go away, at least for me. So if you don't know about the get function, go and Google Lodash and go and check out the get function, because it's and use it. I use it a lot, so it's gonna make your code much more robust. Okay, second thing that I think should be in the language is types. And trust me, the whole world wants typing for JavaScript, and then now you're going to tell me, oh, but Frederick, we have CoffeeScript and TypeScript and Flow and all these things. Yeah, and I'm saying, yeah, we do, but it's not part of the standard. And I'm trying to avoid making a decision that just pick something that works. I personally like the way that PHP uses, you have comments that expresses the types. That's very nice. TypeScript is also great, but make it the standard, because I'm very hesitant, because I've been talking previously about how volatile the JavaScript community is, and to me, if I'm adding something that's not the native JavaScript on top, that's why I'm not touching Elm right now anyway, because and same thing with ClojureScript. I don't like the idea of having one language on top of another, because I don't know right now what the trend is going to be. I don't know if I'm making a huge destructive mistake, because some of the stuff, you know, you tie yourself pretty closely into, like, this is an opt-in thing, but it's not going to be easy for you to predict if you're going to be able to change it when you need to, or if something's going to happen, you're going to get a requirement that you can't fulfill because you can't find a package that will fit this or whatever. So it's the same idea I have about React Native, that it's a great technology, but it's also not something you should think you just throw in there because it's not the native thing. That's anyway how I feel about it. So yeah, types. Okay, and next up is something that Mr. Douglas Crawford also presented. I can't now, for the love of me, I can't remember what the project was about, but JavaScript is notoriously bad at maths, and especially money and rounding and precision. And he has this, like, he's presented this really cool idea, and I think it's such a great idea, where he basically suggested that we introduce a single number format that works that will work with money calculations, that it's designed to, like, the default behavior is actually geared. It's like in Java with big ints. You actually have the only number is designed to work with numbers, because most commonly, that's what I took away from that discussion, is that I think he's right. For the most part, like, you do very simple mathematics and rounding and so forth in JavaScript today, and when you need precision, like high precision, the common case is that you need to calculate money. It's not very often that, like, it's not that many people who do like complex scientific calculations in JavaScript. They usually use Python or something like that. Anyway, I think that's a great idea to create a number format that works very well with money. And finally, this is a subtle one. It's not a hard requirement, but you know, we're going towards this immutable stuff, and everybody's talking functional. I think that's a great movement. I love it. One thing I'm not so happy about is that object.freeze and the behavior of const in ES6 on objects. So const is really cool for like making a constant variable, but if you didn't know this, it doesn't behave the way that at least I would expect it to work on an object. It makes the reference to the object constant, so I can't update that, but I can still mutate things on the object, and that's not what I want. If I declare an object constant or an array constant, I expect nothing should be able to be muted on this object. Now, as I said, object.freeze allows you to do that. But there's a big, like, maybe they changed it, but one of the things that I don't like about that is that object.freeze, if I am by mistake make a reference to something and I try to mutate that object, it just fails silently. There's no error message, and I think that's really important. React does this better than any framework I've ever seen. Like, if you make a mistake or like something like that, they almost always warn you with a really nice or easy to understand error message, and I would really like to see that. I mean, you can keep object.freeze instead of updating const. I understand it, like backwards compatibility and all that stuff, but please add an error message so that if I do something like that, you know, it tells me that, oh, you know, that object there, that's frozen. Because now it just fails silently, it just returns undefined, which I think is a really bad behavior, because then you put, you know, it's not all programmers are experienced enough to know what this does, and they don't use it in their style of programming. So if I add this in, at least that's what happened to me at my job. You know, people start wondering, oh, why do I have these bugs, and they can't really figure it out. And I say, oh yeah, I've frozen this object. And he said, how should I know that? Well, yeah, I don't have a good answer for that. So yeah, that's my short list of things that I would really like to see in JavaScript.